Hello and welcome back to another video. We're going to continue our three-part series on macronutrients. Today is the final part of the series and we're going to be talking all about protein. So protein is a really complex molecule, hence why it's called a macronutrient, and it's made up of a bunch of amino acids, and amino acids are pretty much just the simplest form of a protein. So when you eat a protein, it gets digested into this very simple form, which is called an amino acid. Protein is really important for our body as well as our muscles, and it's actually found in a lot of food sources, but it's the amount that varies within those foods. So there are some foods that are really dense in protein and really concentrated, whereas some of the other foods may not have as much protein or may have it in smaller amounts. So there are foods, as I said, that have a concentrated amount of protein, and that would include animal sources such as meat, dairy, eggs, fish, seafood, as well as the plant-based sources of protein, which would include your legumes, so all of your beans, as well as a lot of nuts and seeds. So we're first going to discuss what a protein is, and then we're going to move on to talking about how it's metabolized and digested within our body. And then we're going to go on and talk about the functions and the importance of protein, as well as some general recommendations. So the structure of proteins consists of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, making them one of the primary sources of nitrogen within our diet. And it's important for us to have nitrogen within our diet so that we can use it for things such as building muscles, our DNA, our skin. It's important for our blood, so it's actually used for a lot of different things within our body. So as I mentioned earlier, amino acids are the most basic and simplest form of a protein, and there are 20 different amino acids that are used to make a protein structure. So there are essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids, and their name kind of defines what they do and their role. So an essential amino acid is something that our body needs, but it doesn't produce it on its own. So therefore it's essential for us to take it in through our diet and the foods that we eat. On the other hand, non-essential amino acids can actually be made by the body through a process called transamination, and it's kind of a complicated thing, but pretty much what happens is it's a chemical process where one amino acid group transfers from one molecule to another. So I'm not going to get into the chemistry or any of that complicated stuff in this video, but just know that a non-essential amino acid does not necessarily have to be consumed through our diet because our body is able to manufacture it on its own. So out of the 20 amino acids, there are 9 that are essential, which means that we have to obtain it through our diet, but there's 11 that are non-essential, and I'll insert a picture. I think I figured that it's this side because then that makes it your left side, right side, my left, your right. So yeah, I'll put a picture here and it'll outline which amino acids fall into which group. I'm not going to touch on them. I'm not going to say all of their names. They're quite hard to say, some of them, but I don't think it would serve you any benefit anyway, so I'm just going to insert a picture. When we say that a food is an incomplete protein, that means it doesn't have all of the essential amino acids that we need to consume through our diet in a sufficient amount. So that makes it a low quality protein, and therefore it's not enough for our growth and our health. However, when a food actually contains all of the 9 essential amino acids and it has them in sufficient amounts, then we call this a high quality protein. This is important because if you're consuming something that is an incomplete protein and it doesn't have all of the amino acids that you need through your diet, then it's beneficial to know what to eat with it so that you can take 2 incomplete proteins and make them a complete protein, because they would supplement and complement each other. So for example, 2 complementary foods that are both incomplete proteins but when eaten together make a complete protein would be something like beans and rice, or something like peanut butter and whole grain toast, since when you eat them together they then provide you with all 9 amino acids that you need. Since we've talked about the most basic form of a protein, which is an amino acid, these amino acids kind of join together to therefore make a protein structure. The amino acids are joined together by something that's called a peptide bond. So each amino acid is held together through a peptide bond, and then the protein itself is then classified based on how many amino acids it has within its structure. So similar to when we talked about carbohydrates, and if you haven't already checked out that video, once again I will be linking it up here and down below, so please check it out, and also check out my video on fats so that you can kind of get an understanding on all 3 macronutrients. So as I said, similar to when we were talking about carbohydrates, the terminology for protein structures is kind of similar. So So if we have 2 amino acids in a structure, then it's called a dipeptide. If we have 3 amino acids, it's called a tripeptide. If we have about 4 to 9 amino acids, it's called an oligopeptide. And if we have 20 or more amino acids, it's called a polypeptide. So you can see that the names are sort of similar in the way that the sugar units combine within a carbohydrate structure. So moving on to the digestion of proteins, that only really begins once the protein has reached our stomach, because there's really no digestion of proteins that happens in our mouth. As I said, same thing was with fats. The only thing that does have a little bit of digestion in our mouth was carbohydrates. Once the protein reaches our stomach, the acid in our stomach attacks it and it kind of breaks it down into smaller and shorter peptides or chains of amino acids, and it probably has around 10 or so amino acids by the time it gets there. And after it kind of gets attacked and broken down, it has around less than 10 amino acids within the structure left. So then it moves into the small intestine, where it's digested and broken down even further, and they go from the long chain polypeptides to oligopeptides to di and tripeptides, and then finally it's broken down into the single amino acid units. So after that happens, the amino acids are then transported, they're sent to the liver, and then the liver sends them where they're needed, if it's the muscle or wherever else it needs to go. Since this process takes a lot longer than the carbohydrate digestion, once again it keeps us fuller for longer, and it would also help us with weight management due to that feeling of satiety and feelings of fullness. It's important that we spread our intake of protein throughout the day, so with our meals, with our snacks, so that our body kind of knows what to do with it. It's better used and more efficiently used when we eat it that way, rather than just having all your protein smack dab in one meal and your body is kind of like, whoa, I kind of just got overwhelmed with all this protein. So definitely have it balanced out and consistently throughout the day with your meals and snacks. So yes, protein is used for energy. They are one of the 3 primary energy sources, but they're also used for a lot of other things throughout our body. We know that they're important in muscle building. They're also important in cell growth. They're really important for our hair, our skin, our nails. They are super important for repairing any wounds or cuts that we have on our body. Good for cell maintenance, cell growth, cell repair. They are structural units of our tissues. They protect us against disease by acting as antibodies, and are also needed for our fluid and electrolyte levels, and they also help us to make hormones and enzymes within our body. So they have a lot of different functions, not just for giving us gains or muscles, but they are really super important, and they are necessary for so many things within our body. But just how much do we need? It obviously varies from person to person. I can't say that one size fits all. As with anything in nutrition, it's a complicated science. It depends on everyone's body, their intake, their type. But the general recommendations state that 10 to 35% of our daily total caloric intake should be coming from protein. The recommendations also state that sedentary adults should consume approximately 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram of their body weight. So for example, if you weigh 50 kilograms, then you would do 50 times 0.8 to figure out how many grams of protein you would need for your body. However, there are populations that require more protein, such as women that are pregnant or lactating, as well as children, adolescents, the elderly, athletes, vegetarians, vegans, or anyone who may be diagnosed with a specific illness in which they require additional protein to help them. However, if you're just the average person like me, I've said it before, counting numbers and having to figure out everything to a specific T is probably not necessary, nor is it going to be beneficial. As long as you're consuming a wide variety of foods, having a balanced meal, and making sure that you're getting a lot of protein through plant sources as well, that's all that really matters. Don't go counting things. Don't worry about it. Don't stress yourself out about it. Just have a balanced meal, enjoy your food, and make sure that you're consuming sources that are beneficial for you and nutritious. So that is kind of it for today's video. I once again tried not to get too in depth on the topics within this series. I just wanted it to be a general video on the 3 macronutrients so that you can kind of get a better understanding, so that moving forward in my videos, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about, and you'll have more knowledge to assess the information and understand what I'm actually saying in my videos going forward. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed this series. Stay tuned for a lot more videos. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like down below, leave all that good stuff. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on my social media, Facebook page, do all that fun stuff so that we can stay connected. I'd love to hear from you guys, so please make sure to stay in touch, and until next time, I will see you in my next video, so stay tuned. Bye!